But let's go ahead and talk about something a little bit different. Let's talk about actually creating queries given a goal and some data sets. Right? And so again, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be creating queries by following this idea of input feature, relationship, selecting feature. So we're going to have the name of the input data set, one of the 5 relationships that we talked about, and then the selecting feature data set. So let's go ahead and go through an example. Right, this is actually going to be a spelled out example of the sort of basic concept that I talked about in the beginning. So, right, you're building a shed on your property, and you have to require to notify all of the homes within a 10-mile radius prior to the start of your construction. Right, so you know that your home's data set is your house, and all of the other houses are in a data set houses. And the idea is that we want to notify all of the homes within a 10-mile radius. So let's go ahead and think through what pieces we would take out of this to generate the spatial query. Well, we know that our input features, right, since we want to notify, we're concerned with our house, so we know that our house is going to be the input feature. Or sorry, I made a mistake there. Right, the thing we want to select from is actually all the other houses. So the other houses, right, are going to be our input feature. So it's going to say houses, right? Now, what are we trying to compare them? Or how are we trying to compare them? Right, we want to find all of the houses within a 10-mile radius. Okay, right, so this within 10-mile radius here, right, this is an indication that our relationship is going to be within distance of. Right, and we would specify under that, right, we would feed in the distance 10 miles. And then what are we comparing that to? Well, we're comparing that to, right, our house. Right? So it would be right. So the overall spatial query is going to say houses within distance of your house. And we would specify, right, that 10 miles is that distance. So hopefully that made sense. Let's go ahead and look at another example. And in this case, right, we're working for the fire department. And the fire department needs to examine or repair all of the fire hydrants that are inside of the village of West Farmingdale. Right, and so the idea here is that they have a statewide or a county-wide data set of fire hydrants, and they want to get only the ones that are inside of West Farmingdale. And so what they've got is they've got a data set of fire hydrants called fire hides, and a data set for the boundary of West Farmingdale called West Farm. So there's actually a couple of ways we could approach it, but we're going to do the one that is probably the most straightforward and the most default. So first, let's go ahead and start by deciding what are we wanting to select, right? What is the thing that we want to select from? Well, we know that our output is we want to examine fire hydrants. So we want to examine and pull out data from the fire hydrants. So it's going to be fire hydrant, fire underscore hides. Right, well, what kind of comparison do we want to make? Right, well, right, R in, right, this R in, this would be a good option to consider, right, within. Right, because we only want to get the fire hydrants if they're inside of West Farmingdale. And anytime you want a input feature that is inside of a selecting feature, you want to use within. Right. And then what are we doing this comparison to? Well, we're doing this comparison to West Farmingdale, which we know the data set is called West Farm. So West underscore farm. All right. So the full spatial query would read something like fire hides within West Farm. Okay. So hopefully that made sense, especially why we chose within. So let's go ahead and do one more example. And in this case, we're working for the US Department of Transportation, right? And so in this case, right, they've generated a new roads data set, and they're really curious to see which roads they need to focus on in terms of which roads are actually added after the old roads data set was selected. So they want to figure out what roads they already had so that they can then figure out what roads they've added. So their goal here is to start by selecting the roads that are already in the old data set. So this one might be a little bit confusing, so let's go ahead and just walk through it slowly and carefully. And just like before, right, we're going to start with what are the input features? What are the things that we want to select, right? Well, what we want to select is we want to select roads in the new data set, right? So we want to select from the new roads, right? The new roads data set. So we want new underscore roads, right? And so again, right, in this case, there are actually a couple of options for the relationship, but I'm going to choose the one that I think makes the most sense and is the most apparent, right? And that's the idea that we want to grab the new roads that are the same as the old roads, or that share a line with the old roads. And whenever we want to share a line, right, the relationship is going to be, right, shares line, or you might see this called shares boundary. Right, this is going to pull from the new roads, right, any that are the same as, right, in this case, well, what are we comparing them to? Right, well, we're comparing them, right, to the old data set or the old roads. Oops. Not rads, roads, right? So new roads shares line with old roads, right? And that's going to grab data from the new roads that are the same as the old roads. So hopefully that made sense. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to actually have you go through some review questions. So take a minute, go back, grab those possible list of relationships, and get ready to go through a couple of examples on your own. So as always, I encourage you to pause the video for each question, work through it on your own, and then replay the video and we'll continue and we'll go through them. So for the first question, you're working for the post office. And the post office wants to find all of the mailboxes that are located on vacant lots to ensure efficient and accurate mail delivery. The data set for mailboxes is mail, and the data set for vacant lots is lots. So write a spatial query that finds the mailboxes that are located on vacant lots. Okay, so hopefully you've given it some thought. Let's go ahead and just quickly write down the answer. Well, we want the mailbox. We're trying to select mailboxes. So our input feature is going to be mailboxes, or mail in this case, right? Because the name of the data set is mail. Right? We want mailboxes that are on vacant lots. So whenever you see on or within or inside, right, you're going to go within. Right? And within what? They're within the vacant lots. And our vacant lots data set is lots. So it's going to be mail within lots. So hopefully that made sense and you were able to get that one correct. Let's go ahead and look at another one. Right, in this case, you're working for the Metro Transit Authority. So this is, at least in New York, this is the company that, or the branch that oversees things like subways and train stations. And basically what they want to do is they want to ensure that the roads that cross their rail lines are being properly maintained. So they want to find the roads that cross over their railroads so that they can go look at them to make sure that they're being maintained so that we don't have accidents where people get stranded on a railroad track. So the roads data set is roads and the rails data set is rails. So let's generate a query that is going to find all of the roads that cross over the rail lines. Okay, so just like before, right, what are we grabbing? Well, we want to find the roads, right? The thing we want to select from is roads. So we're going to do roads, right, that cross over. So cross over to me means, hey, if it touches any part, that's what we want. So anytime we're talking about all it has to do is touch, we want intersect, right? Because we only care if it touches it at all. And then what are we intersecting? Well, we're intersecting the rails, right? So this is going to be roads intersects rails. All right, let's do one more. In this case, right, you're working on a project with a friend, and the friend has a nationwide data set of cities with populations greater than 1 million people. But what their particular task is to only work with those that are in New York and New Jersey. So the idea here is that we want to grab the cities that are inside of New York and New Jersey. All right, so the city's data set is city, and the state boundaries is bounds. So let's go ahead and think up a spatial query that is going to get the cities that are inside of New York and New Jersey. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to think about it. Let's go ahead and work it out together. Right. So again, the idea here is that we want cities. So we're going to be selecting from, in this case, the data set is city. Right. And what are we going to do? Well, we want to get the cities that are inside of New York and New Jersey. So whenever we want to grab something that is inside of something else, we use within, right? And then what are we basing this within on? Based on New York and New Jersey. And we know that the state boundaries are in a data set called bounds. So it's going to look something like this, right? City within bounds. Hopefully that made sense. Hopefully these examples and review questions made sense. As always, if you have any questions on this kind of thing, please reach out.